Thank you for checking out Scotty's Hobbies. Today we're going to be replacing the front pads and rotors on this 2013 Chevy Malibu. This will be the same, if not very similar, for many makes and models. We'll list in the video later and in the description below. By the time you're done watching this video, your brake job should turn out a little something like this, and I'll give you proper torque specifications for the bolts when you tighten them up, and tips along the way. If you need any parts to get this job done, make sure you look for links in the description below, and also the tools. We have the torque wrench, sockets, some lube, all that type of stuff will be in the description below. If this video helps you out, make sure you comment below with the year, make, model of the vehicle that this helped you get the job done. Also, if you have any friends, family, anybody like that that has a vehicle, make sure you tell them about me. And while you're watching the video, you can see I just turned the wheel to the driver's side just so that the caliper is facing out. It gives you a little bit more access or ease of access to get to all the parts that you're going to be removing. Before you get too far into the job, make sure you have something under the vehicle, such as a jack stand or a tire, in case your jack gives out while you're getting this job done. This here is a 14 millimeter socket, 3/8 wrench, and a thin wall crescent wrench. I'm loosening the caliper bolts using the 14 millimeter and holding the slider pin bolts with that thin wall crescent wrench. There is a ton of other vehicles that this will be the same, if not very similar on, and real quick, a couple of those off the list. A 2012 to 2016 Buick Lacrosse, a 2011 to 2012 Buick Regal, a Chevy Malibu, as you can see, 2013, 2015, and you can see these bolts were a little bit tight taking them off. They were really too tight. Whoever put them on before, I'm assuming, did not use proper torque specifications when tightening everything up. And when you are watching this video more towards the end, we will go over the proper torque specifications. Very important to do a proper brake job and to avoid wear and tear or more excessive faster wear and tear on your brakes. If it's tightened up properly, lubed properly, your brakes are going to get the longest life out of them that you could possibly can. I've had a lot of people say, oh, I chewed through brakes within a few thousand miles or whatever. Maybe not that much, but one guy said he had 25,000 miles on 2 different brake pad sets, and it ended up being his wheel bearings were bad. So if you're going through pads, there might be something else going on. Remove the brake caliper, set it off to the side. You do not want it to hang on the hose. Now that you have everything taken off, this is a good time to look around at everything, see if you notice anything abnormal, see if you have any boots on the CV shaft ripped or anything like that. To remove the brake caliper bracket, we are going to use a 21 millimeter socket on a 1/2 inch drive. These ones were pretty tight too, but when you tighten them up, these ones, they should be pretty tight. So I wouldn't worry about these ones too much if they were over tightened. I just used that 1/2 inch breaker bar to get them loose, and now I'm using a 1/2 inch socket wrench to just speed up the process of loosening everything up. Hopefully through editing, this goes a little bit faster than it does in person. Oh yeah, how long does this take job? How long does this job take? Generally, in my driveway like this, helping friends out, I could get a brake job done in less than an hour if I have all the parts. So it doesn't take too long. If you were to take this to a shop, I'd say give them a few hours, and you're probably going to pay around $300, maybe a little bit more for all the parts that we're replacing in this video. Remove your caliper bracket bolts, set them off to the side, somewhere where you're not going to lose them. This job should be pretty quick, so it should be pretty hard to lose these. Again, those are a 21 millimeter bolt head. I prefer 6-point socket. In the description, there will be links to purchase a mechanic set if you need one, a pretty basic set. Again, take a look at everything, see where your wear indicator is located on the brake pads, what position it is. This one is the lower one, you can see right there. So when we're putting it back together, make sure your wear indicator is in the same location. Now, before we compress the piston back into the caliper, let's go ahead and remove the rotor. You do not want to allow the caliper to hang by the brake hose, so make sure you jam it up on the spring up there or use like a bungee cord and tie it up there. Now we need to remove this little screw that holds your rotor on. I think this is called a production screw. I used a T30 Torx bit to remove that production screw on the rotor. Now you want to loosen the cap on your brake fluid reservoir for when you push the piston back into the caliper, the fluid has somewhere to go rather than finding a seal to blow out. Using this method, you do not need to bleed the brake system after you're done. If you're not opening the brake system, there's no need to bleed it. If you have a squishy pedal or something like that, then you might want to think about bleeding it. But using this method, bleeding is not necessary. Now we're going to go ahead and push the piston back into the caliper using a caliper compression tool. You can see this one right here is a little bit more of a fancy one. It's a fairly newer one for me. You're going to see that in just a moment. It's supposed to work on many more vehicles and be some special stuff. So I got this one, give it a try, and you can too. This one is way more beneficial for the pistons that have to screw back in. You can see I'm going to use it to push the piston back into the caliper, and I'm going to use a much cheaper, easier, faster compression tool that I've been using forever that I picked up for under 20 bucks at the local parts store, and it's much easier than this one. When you press the piston all the way in, or you want to press it all the way into the caliper as far as it will go, you don't want any of the pistons sticking out and getting hung up on the brake pad when you try to reinstall it. So push it all the way in as far as it could go. You might also have some fluid come out of the brake fluid reservoir at this time and just start leaking under the car, pretty much near your knees right there. Don't be alarmed, that is normal, but you do want to wash that off before you get going on your next trip so your vehicle doesn't start smelling. You can see I got this piston pushed in pretty far, and I finally said, you know what, let's go ahead and use this older, easier one. You can see it's super basic. This one goes right in, and it just pushes the caliper back in. Sorry, the piston back into the caliper. It's super easy. I would highly recommend getting this one for this brake job if this is all that you're going to be doing. It's all you need. Trust me. If you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. If you have somebody such as a friend, family member, coworker, anybody that has a car, I might have a video for them, so make sure you tell everybody about me, please. When you're compressing that piston, also make sure you use an old brake pad, not a new brake pad, to push it in. You don't want to destroy that new one during the installation process. Now we're getting down to the point to where we're going to focus on the minor stuff to make this a really good BJ, not just a quick sloppy one, but getting everything properly lubed, making sure everything slides so you have nothing sticking and you get the longest life out of your brake pads and your rotors. You want to make sure that everything freely moves. If either of your sliders right here are seized, for sure get them unseized, clean everything out. You can see with the process I go through to clean all of the calipers that I remove. I do this to all of them. I do my best to not skip any of this process. I clean off the old lube. If the inside of the caliper bracket is packed with a lot of lube from the old lube, or say it's like milky or super gummy, I'll clean it out with a pipe cleaner. I'll go down to like my local Joann's or art store or something and get a little pipe cleaner, clean it all out. So you can see liberally lube your sliders. Make sure they slide in and out. If your boots right here are ripped and you have grease leaking out of these boots, replace them now. You might also find some brake pad kits that include a hardware kit that have the boots included. I install a lot of Power Stop brake parts, and I'd say a lot of their upper end brake pad sets have boots in them. If you check in my video library, I have like the Lexus and other videos. A lot of them lately that have that boot kit. Make sure everything slides. This is where this is like the major difference of a good brake job and a very poor brake job, is missing this point. It's super little, super quick. A lot of people miss it. They just say, oh, whatever, it's moving. If you were to hit the brakes and one of these sliders be seized, your brake pad is going to wear very unevenly and you're going to get very poor stopping power, if not some more vibration or pulling to the left or right, depending on which brake pad or which slider is not moving. You can see the wear indicator right there inside brake pad, I believe it was on the bottom. so make sure it goes back in the same position. These right here will stop the brake pads from vibrating and causing a lot of sound. I always replace these. If you're going to reuse yours, make sure you use a wire brush or like a Brillo pad or something and clean them off before you put them on, or put your brake pads on, I should say. No grease is required to be put on your hardware right here, and I would highly recommend to not actually put grease on there. Once upon a time, I used to, thinking it was a good thing, but somebody commented and let me know that it actually traps dust and actually makes it so your brake pad will not move properly quicker, so your brake pads won't last as long. So do not put any grease on the hardware kit or on the sliders. Right here, you'll make sure that you have nothing hanging over to where it would be rubbing on the rotor. Now that you have this pretty much rebuilt or revamped, let's go ahead and put the rotor on. Line up the hole with the production screw hole. If you don't have this screw or you stripped it out, you could use a couple lug nuts at this point to hold the rotor on. It makes it a lot easier to do this brake job so the rotor's not wobbling around when you're installing the caliper or the bracket. I'm using my impact gun right here on this T30 Torx, but you could use a 1/4 inch or like a 3/8 drive ratchet too. Install the caliper bracket. These are those 21 millimeter bolts that hold the bracket onto spindle. These need to be properly torqued down, and another thing, this is another step that often gets overlooked when doing maintenance or a brake job on your vehicle, is proper torque specification. You can tighten it down really tight, get it like German torque specs of good and tight. This one needs to be a lot tighter than the caliper that's going to come up shortly. But if you are going to use proper torque specifications using a torque wrench, I would use a 6-point socket on a 1/2 inch drive torque wrench and torque these down to about 115 foot-pounds. The book says it needs to be 111 foot-pounds plus a 45-degree turn, and then another 15-degree turn. So roughly, I don't know, I'm saying 115. I don't think you'll have a problem at that. You can see I'm using a 1/2 inch torque wrench to tighten these ones down. And I personally took mine down to 115 foot-pounds, and it seems to work just fine so far. Now that we get that all done, go ahead and put the brake pads into your bracket. Make sure you have that wear indicator in the proper location. These should go on fairly easy. If it's hard to push them on, double check, make sure you have everything installed properly, everything's clipped into place. Again, don't use any grease other than in your slider pins and inside those boots. Make sure everything could slide together. And also, before you go too far, the pins on the top and the bottom, just make sure they're not rubbing on the rotor. So when you start driving away, don't get that sound. And you got to do it all over again. So just double check before you go. I also recommend, while you're doing this, take pictures along the process that you're going upon, so you know where everything went. Just in case you forget, you're like, oh man, where did this one go? Well, you have a picture of it. That's one benefit of making these videos. I could always look back and be like, oh, what was that? Where did it go? And if I forget. These 14 millimeter bolts to hold the caliper itself onto the bracket need to be torqued down as well. These ones are really light. 20 foot-pounds is what the book calls for. That is pretty light on any bolt in my book, but these are a very, very fine thread and like an aluminum bolt or screw, so they break really, really easy. So you don't want to over-tighten these ones. You will need a thin wall crescent wrench or something to hold your slider pin, just so you can make sure it's held in place when you're tightening everything down, torquing everything down. And this is pretty much it. But before you go too far, you need to make sure you get your cap back on your fluid reservoir, and also pump your brake pads. Before you put this thing back on the ground, go too far, pump the brake pads. You should get a firm pedal within about 3 to 5 pumps, and just pump it all the way to the floor. Get a nice firm pump out of them. Take a look at everything, admire your work, admire the time it took to do this. Again, it should take about an hour to get this done. Now that you have the knowledge and power to get everything done, get out there, get it done, Let me know how it went. Tell everybody about me. Like, subscribe, and share. Look for links in the description below for parts and tools used in this video. Hopefully one of these two videos right here might help you out on your DIY journey. And again, I have a ton of videos on different vehicles. On this Malibu itself, there's going to be air filter, tune-up, emissions control devices, a lot of stuff on this one. Oh, the cabin air filter, all that on this Malibu is coming up too. So make sure you subscribe and take care of everything on your vehicle. Maintenance will make your vehicle last forever. Like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you in the next hopefully helpful video. Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies.